That's just you guys.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. I'm Sepi Masoudi, the Associate Chair of Language Training at Northwest College, and we are happy to have you here today with us to discuss some issues or matters about IELTS exam. And I hope you can hear me well. I'm Sepi Masoudi, the Associate Chair of Language Training at Northwest College, and we are happy to have you here today with us to discuss some issues or matters about IELTS exam. And I hope you can hear me well. Okay, hopefully we are not having lots of audio issues. It seems like I'm hearing my voice echo. So, is there a way that they could let us know if there is an issue here?
They can send an email through Ask Questions. I'm monitoring that.
Okay, okay. Today we have 4 people here on our side, and I'm glad to introduce you to Barb Hodkins. She's the manager of our Rural Roots program, and she kind of managed this event, so we can come together today and hopefully have a very interesting discussion on IELTS. And also, we have 2 of our wonderful teachers, Niranjana McEwan and Peter Edmondstone, with us. Um, as I said, there are really good instructors at Northwest College, but also they are IELTS examiners and have lots of experience in this field. So I'm sure we will have a really interesting session, and I'm looking forward to that personally.
Great, thanks. And
Barb, do you want to take over from here? Or?
Sure, I'll come in front of the microphone real quick. Hi, welcome everyone. It's Barb Hodkins here. I know you can barely see me, but this is the first time we're using Google Air, so I hope everyone is enjoying the live stream, and everyone that was able to make it in, they had a chance to. I will be monitoring the questions that comes up on the board through our Google form, so please feel free to post in there. And I'm going to leave it up to our experts. They have copies of your questions, and they will certainly go through those and answer them the best they can. And they also have some presentations, so hopefully everyone can see the PowerPoint, and we're ready to go. Thanks.
Thanks, Barb.
let's see it. Hope that's not blocking or is it? Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good. Great.
So is it just next?
I think. Let's see how it works. Google. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about IELTS and what it is, who's it intended for, and a little bit about the format of the IELTS and so on. And so we'll begin with that. So by the end of the workshop, hopefully you have a better understanding of what the IELTS is. And if you have any questions, of course, we'll deal with those. And then also we'll give you some information about some ESL activities with IELTS to practice. Actually, one of the questions I saw right off the start was, what are some good cheap ways or inexpensive ways to practice IELTS? And really, there's tons of stuff on the internet that we'll be happy to share with you later on.
Okay, so one of the,
Well, it changed here, but it didn't change there.
Yeah.
It's okay. No. Okay. Yeah, is it out of range, Barb? Or? Well, let's just skip over that. That's hidden as well. Go ahead, sharing your screen. That's good.
so to begin with, IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System, and it's an exam which is very well known all over the world. And I think in Canada, it's been used quite a lot for immigration, for entering universities and colleges. So it's quite a popular exam, and there are so many students who take this exam every month here in Edmonton. So what is IELTS? It's a standardized test designed to assess the language ability of candidates who need to study or work in an English-speaking country. Yeah, so it was founded in 1980, and it's jointly owned and operated by British Council, IDP IELTS Australia, and Cambridge English Language Assessment. And there are 7,000 organizations who accept IELTS scores for immigration as well as university. And in 2012, there were 1.9 million test takers. So it goes to show the size of this exam and how huge it is.
And it's an international standard for it. It conforms to the highest international standards in security. New content is constantly being created. They don't reuse exams or tests or anything like that. And they try to pay attention to try to make the material content relevant throughout the English-speaking world. It's not tied to one culture or one place. We see some examples from most English-speaking countries: Australia, New Zealand, Britain, Canada, US, and so on.
Yeah. There are two phases of IELTS, and there are two different versions of the test. There's the academic, which is related to university and colleges where students, or even for sometimes even for doctors and nurses who are trying to renew their license. And there's the general exam, which is for immigrants and getting the PR or getting into Canada. So there's a little difference between the academic and the general exam. So the academic test, like I said, is for university and undergraduate and postgraduate level, and also to join professional organizations in Canada, like doctors and nurses. And the general test is to train or study at below degree level, and to work in a work-related training in an English-speaking country. And it's also used for immigration in most English-speaking countries. And Canada, I think it's one of the criteria for immigrating to Canada is to take the IELTS exam.
Let's take a little look at the IELTS test itself. And there are 4 sections to it. There's listening and speaking. And I believe for the academic and there are differences between the academic and the general and in all 4 skill areas. The format is the same, it's just the types of questions that are used differ somewhat. So for example, if you look at the general training for reading, there are 3 sections with 40 items. Likewise with the academic.
Oh, here it is.
And with the writing, same thing. For general, 150 words. Task 2, it has 250 words. And it's the same thing for the academic. Again, the only difference is the types of questions that are being used in the 2 different streams. Should we just keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah, so with the listening, there's again general and academic, and there's general and academic. Just kind of look at that slide. So let's move on. And the band titles, starting at the top, there's expert user, which is very much native-like, but you'll find that even some native speakers will score 9 all the time. 8 is very good user, 7 good user, 6 competent user, 5 modest users, 4 limited user, and 3 extremely limited user, all the way down to someone who perhaps did not attempt the test. And when the students see their candidates see their scores, the scores are in increments of half a point. So IELTS listening, and let's pass that on to Naranja now.
So the purpose of the listening test, it's actually designed to assess a wide range of listening skills, including how well a candidate understands the main ideas and specific factual information, recognizes opinions, attitudes, and purpose of a speaker, and develops and follows the development of an argument. And also to identify purpose, main ideas, implied meanings of requests, reminders, orders, and keys, and also distinguish facts from opinions in informal presentations. Also, one of the purposes to identify factual details, main ideas, supporting details, explanations, opinions, and implied meanings in informal presentations with the use of visuals. Usually there's a graph or sometimes a map or a chart in which they need to write or recognize certain. I'd like to talk a little bit about the questions for the listening. There are 40 questions and a variety of question types is used. Like there could be multiple choice questions. There could be a plan, a map, or a diagram in which they have to label, something like listen to directions and label it or name the building, fill in a form, complete a table, follow a flow chart, or give short answers. The outcomes that align, now the listening, some of the outcomes align with CLB 6 and 7, and they're sort of similar to what we have in CLB 6 and 7. That's identifying the main ideas, identifying specific information and roles of speakers, distinguish facts, opinions, or explanations. So there is some kind of a similarity there between IELTS and CLB 6 and 7. So as you can see, we've got the raw score out of 40, and we've got the band score of IELTS. So if out of 40 you get 16 questions right, you get a band score of 5. And if you get 23 out of 40 right, you get a band score of 6. And out of 30, you get a band score of 7. 35 is a score of 8. So, there are lots of times where we can, give some useful tips to our students to sort of help them get ready for the listening test, because students are just, or candidates are just allowed to listen to the listening just once. So pre-reading the questions is very good. Read the whole question, read as you listen, look for clues in the questions. So like, where, what, when could be useful clues for the questions. listen for repeated words, don't wait to write, and don't leave any answers blank. And do as many practice tests as you can. And I'll just tell you some sites that I use with my students for listening.
Okay, so looking now at the reading, the IELTS general and academic reading, look at some of the similarities, some of the differences, and connections to ESL. So some of the similarities are that both tests, whether it's general or academic, are 60 minutes in length, and that includes transfer time. And transfer time means the time they have to write the answers on the bubble sheet. And there are 3 sections with increasing levels of difficulty, so it gets progressively more difficult. The reading has anywhere from 2,100 to 2,700 words, and there are 13 to 14 questions for each section, with a total of 40 questions. Each question receives 1 mark, and the correct answers are converted into a band score, just as Niranjan explained with the listening. And the reason for that is that in order to, for consistency, because some tests may be a little more difficult or a little easier, and so it's just one way to provide a range for the same band score. So a band score of 5, a raw score of 15 results in a band score of 5. 23 raw score converts to a band of 6. 30 is a band score of 7. 35 is a band score of 8. And that's on the academic side. Looking at the general side, a raw score of 15 will result in a band score of 4. And 23 out of 40 in the general will give a band score of 5. And 30 will give a band score of 6. And 34 will be 7. Similarly, there are also similarities in question types. They're all multiple choice questions or short answer questions. Maybe completing questions by filling in blanks to complete the sentences, completing notes, completing a summary with a word bank, that is, the students are given word prompts to use to fill in the blanks, and completing a diagram or flow chart and or a table based on what they have read. There may also be an activity of matching headings to identify the paragraphs or parts of a text. They may be matching a bank of writers' views, claims, or information with the writer. Identification of information in the text. Yes, no, or not given questions, or true, false, not given questions. And matching lists and phrases, and the classification of questions as well. General and academic reading differences, looking at the differences now. The general has 3 sections, where 1 and 2 have several texts, and section 3 has 1 longer text. Whereas on the academic side, there are 3 long texts, which range from descriptive and factual to discursive and analytical types of texts. The general also may have some extracts from books, magazines, newspapers, notices, advertisements, company handbooks, and guidelines. So there's a real range of material that the students have, or the candidates have to work with on the exam. Whereas in academic, the texts are authentic and are taken from books, journals, magazines, and newspapers. Just generally a more academic kind of source of material. In general, the material is likely to be encountered on a daily basis in an English-speaking environment. Whereas in the academic side, it's appropriate for anyone entering undergraduate or postgraduate courses seeking professional registration. So it's a little more academic in nature. With the reading, there's a variety of reading skills that are already built into the ESL curriculum. So it's much like, if you're familiar with the CLB, then there are a number of skills that do cross over from CLB to IELTS. So reading for the gist, reading for the main ideas, reading for detail, skimming, understanding logical argument, and recognizing writers' opinions, attitudes, and purposes. And that includes distinguishing between what is an opinion and what is an argument. These are just sort of general correlations, but the IELTS general, CLB 5 or 6, it's about a specific learning outcome. Oh, this is, sorry, that's Norcross stuff. Probably doesn't interest you. So what can you do to improve your reading scores? Well, read, and read. Timed readings are good because, of course, it is a timed test or timed exam. Read for pleasure. Open book IELTS readings. There are lots of sources on the internet that we can get to a little later on and show you and share with you. Newspapers and research papers, particularly with academic, because there are sample newspaper articles on the academic reading exam. And scanning practice is good. So here's a reading and writing. Okay, both the general and academic, the candidates are given 60 minutes and there are 2 tasks to complete. And the first task is 150 words. The second task is 250 words. And task 2 is an essay. And then we'll look at the grading criteria in a moment too. So the criteria that's used to assess the candidate scores is task achievement and task response. And basically that's looking at the fact, did they answer the question? Did they address it in a complete way? The next section is coherence and cohesion, and that's using transition words and just generally having a good flow to their essays as they write. Lexical resource, how strong is their vocabulary? How academic is their vocabulary? And then grammatical range of it and accuracy as well. So by grammatical range, we mean it's not just do you have perfect grammar, but have you used a variety of structures, passive voice, complex sentences, compound complex sentences, and so on. So it's not just having correct grammar, it's also using sophisticated grammar, advanced grammar. Okay. So what's the task focus with the general? It's just writing an English letter, and they're given a particular topic to write on, and it's writing a letter in response to that topic. So what order do you put the information in? What style do they use? Just sort of writing a good letter, using letter writing convention. How to start and finish a letter, opening, closing. And I guess key to it, and can't stress this enough, is that understand the question that's being asked of them and answering the question appropriately in the letter that they're writing. And then, of course, using language accurately and appropriately to organize the linked information coherently and cohesively. So the first, for general exam, task 1 is writing a letter. That's pretty standard for every task 1. And I've just lost my... Okay. And there can be several purposes for writing the letter. It can be giving and requesting information. So if you're helping your students prepare for it, these are the kinds of skills that they should be looking at. Or if you want to provide sample letters, and again, we'll look at some websites later on with those samples, but the letters typically ask the candidates to give information. Or it could even be the other side where it's writing letters to request information. The letters may also be asked to give instructions, including directions, relating to an event, giving good or bad news. Complaining is a common type of task that the candidates are asked to do. A mild or strong complaint, or describing advice.
All right. I guess key to it, can't stress this enough, is that understand the question that's being asked and answering the question appropriately in the letter that you're writing. And then, of course, using language accurately.
So looking at the IELTS academic task 1.
These sheets are the ones I ran off.
Well,
This logo up top and this design here.
so the general task 1 is writing a letter, and it will always be writing a letter. The academic will be, the candidates are asked to respond to a particular graph. There could be a bar graph, a line graph, a pie graph, a table, a chart, or a process where they may be given a diagram of a process and they have to describe what that process is and give explaining the different steps involved in that process. It could be how something works, how something is done, or a third type is a map. Sometimes students are given a map or maybe given 2 maps and compare kind of before and after kind of. So this task tests the candidate's ability to select and report the main features. So this is something that you may be familiar with doing in CLB things. To describe and compare data, identify significance and trends in factual information, or describe a process. Yeah, okay. Skip over that. So writing task 2, with these 2 tasks are a little more similar than task 1, because in task 2, with the general, or in both of them, they're asked to write a discursive essay on a general topic of interest, and in academics, a discursive essay on an academic topic. But they're pretty similar. So some sample topics that we can look at are, well, there's one. Young people are encouraged to travel or work for 1 year after high school and before university studies. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages of that. So that's, again, a very common kind of question you'll see on IELTS, advantages and disadvantages. If there's one common theme, you almost always have some opportunity for the candidate to express an opinion. And that's something they should be watching for. Over on the academic side, there's an example topic. The threat of nuclear weapons maintains world peace. Nuclear power provides cheap and clean energy. The benefits of nuclear technology far outweigh the disadvantages. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So again, there's a general theme there of giving an opinion, but it's, again, expressing it as agree or disagree rather than advantages and disadvantages. Over that. And then the IELTS speaking, and I'll pass it back over to Niranjana.
So the IELTS speaking is the last part of the test, and it's usually conducted when they finish the reading, the listening, the reading, and the writing. And the purpose of the test is designed to assess the wide range of skills. The examiner will want to see how well a candidate can communicate opinions and information on everyday topics and common experiences. To do this, you will need to answer a range of questions. So usually we start off with a warm-up questions, and these are basically very general, asking them about their house maybe, or where they live, or what kind of a job do they do, if they're students or if they work. So that's a kind of a warm-up. And then the second part of the speaking test is they are given a topic, and they have to speak at length on a given topic using appropriate language, and they should be able to organize their ideas coherently, express and justify their opinions, analyze, discuss, and speculate about issues. And this is in the third part of the speaking test. So what's the format of the speaking test? So section 1 is for about 4 to 5 minutes. And like I said, it's a general introductory questions. There are some general introductory questions, personal questions, and 2 topics of general interest.
You can put it on share screen so it comes a little bit bigger.
Oh, no, we can't show the screen.
Oh, you can.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
And then section 2 is for about 3 to 4 minutes, and it's a monologue. A card or a topic is given by the examiner, and the candidate has about a minute to prepare, and then the candidate speaks for about 1 to 2 minutes. And then section 3 is for about 4 to 5 minutes, and section 3 is sort of connected to section 2 because the topic which is from section 2 is sort of elaborated and discussed in a more abstract manner, not in a very concrete manner, but in a very abstract manner. And it's like a sort of a discussion between the examiner and the candidate. So that's the 3 sections of the speaking test. So it takes about 13 to 14 minutes. So basically,
Yeah.
how the CLB 6 and 7 are sort of similar or aligned to the IELTS. They also provide reasons and predictions, consequences of following through using modals with appropriate level of politeness. They can use a range of everyday vocabulary, topic specific, which may include some idioms and a few common cultural references. So this is how we sort of align it with CLB 6 and 7, and also some variety of grammatical structures with developing control of more complex structures, that is compound and complex sentences. So it's very similar to what we have in CLB 6 and 7, presenting information with connected words, connected discourse, phrases, using phrases appropriately, correct pronunciation of words, effective intonation, and syllable stress. So how do we weigh this? So there are 4 parts of the speaking band descriptors. There's a fluency and coherence, which is 25%, lexical resource, which is also 25%, grammatical range and accuracy, 25%, and pronunciation. So equal weight is given to all 4 descriptors for the speaking. So how do we enhance IELTS speaking scores, and how do we, encourage our students or candidates to speak better? So we could have classroom conversation, presentation work, oral readings, pronunciation exercises, picture descriptors, described drawing, student interviews, and any other ideas that you have for encouraging speaking in class. So what's the conclusion? What key principles are there for connecting ESL activities with IELTS practice? And what did you gain from this workshop?
Okay. Let's say there are any questions or?
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe we can look at a couple of the questions that were posted. You can see them here on the
Sure.
side, and we can address a couple of those now.
So I'm looking at the question at the top here. Give all the reasons why a learner would write an IELTS test from, okay. Well, it's really, it's a personal choice for everybody, depending on who's demanding it. And at the outset, we explained that if you want to get into the university or McEwen or wherever, you're going to need IELTS. If you want to immigrate, I know a number of our students here at Norquest have had to write the IELTS in order to immigrate to Canada. In order to get citizenship, I believe there's also IELTS as well. And Naranja mentioned at the beginning that some certification for certain professions also require IELTS. I think for medicine, doctors require an IELTS band level of 7 in order to get their medical license here. And of course, you got to do the medical exams as well, but that's one of the other prerequisites is that they have a band level of 7.
And that question was from Wainwright Adult Learning. Okay, let's find another question here that we can answer.
Yeah, what are the best ways that I can assist a student in preparing themselves for this exam? I think the best ways, there are lots of websites on the internet, and there are also sometimes books that you can recommend to students. So I could just give you a couple of websites, and if you want, I can just email them to you.
Perhaps you can give it to Barb and Barb
Yes.
can take it forward.
Yeah, but some of the good ones are like examenglish.com, canadavisa.com is another good one. And there's a very good website which is called the australiannetwork.com, study English and prepare for IELTS. And it's got really good videos where, your students could watch those videos and improve their vocabulary skills as well as their speaking skills.
And some things, I'm not going to read out all the websites, but things that would be helpful for the academic task 1, they have to quite often describe graphs. And if you just go over to the ESL, if you Google ESL Flow, F-L-O-W, and describing graphs, it has a number of really good exercises there. The ESL Flow website does not have interactive activities, but they're pretty good. Another one that you could check out is Ielts Essentials. And again, just Google Ielts Essentials, and you'll come up with lots of different practice tests, and more than just practice tests, but tips and strategies for taking on the exam. And Also, just general information about IELTS, you can go to IELTS.org, and there are lots and lots of ideas there, tips for students, and there are links from that website to other practice tests. Yeah, but we'll try to compile this and give it to Barb. Maybe Barb can send it out to the various regions.
And another thing I'd encourage you to tell your students would be to, do a lot of timed reading, because what I find that some of the students are always telling me that they didn't have enough time to complete their reading questions because they've got 45 minutes to do 3 reading passages, and I think their organizational skills would really help them there if they do a lot of time reading. And I think it's the same thing with writing, because there are 2 questions and sometimes they don't have enough of time to complete both questions. So a bit of time organization and to write an exam under time constraints would be a good way to practice.
Another good website, probably be here all afternoon, give you good websites, but if you go IELTS-exam.net, and they have lots of good reading exercises there. They provide, writing samples. Actually, they have all 4 skills, but I use it primarily for the writing skills. They give well over 100 sample exam questions that are actual IELTS questions, plus sample answers. So what I've had students do in the past is read the question, answer it yourself. I'll go over it with them. Then together we'll look at the sample answer that was given and compare what our students had written to what the perfect score, so to speak, sample is on the website, and sort of see where they need to improve or where they could improve to bring their score up in terms of writing skills.
And
yeah, and next question we can take from Lloydminster Learning Council Association. The question is, what CLB should learners have in order to be able to write an IELTS test? Are newcomers being screened to be at a certain CLB before entering Canada now? What CLB would Syrian refugees be at? Well, yeah.
We were talking about this just before the discussion, and there isn't a certain score. It depends on what class of immigration you're in. I'd be willing to bet, although I can't say for sure, that the Syrian refugees would not have to have any IELTS score in order to come. There are depends on what status of immigration you're applying for, and I think you were saying the workplace, is that not work?
you mean
The temporary workers.
worker.
I think it was a very low score, 4 or 5, something like that.
I think it depends where you work.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the program probably that they come in. I think that kind of information would be more available on CIC website, depending on the new regulations they pass for any kind of newcomers that come to Canada. I think that would be a resource that I would use to look into that, for the CLB levels, because I think it varies according to the program that they come under. And if you can get one more question from, again, Lloydminster Learning Council Association. The question is the IELTS test via computer and in person? Please tell which is via computer and which is via in person for reading, writing, listening, speaking. Yeah, that's the question.
Okay. The IELTS test can be done on computer in every skill except speaking, but it must be done at a test center, and I believe they're scheduled at the same time as the in-person test. So there's really, I don't really see any advantage in doing it by computer unless it may have to do with your typing skills or something like that. It's easier to type than it is to handwrite things, but it can't be done remotely. It must be done at a test center.
It has to be face to face.
And as far as I know, the only test center I could find that actually offers, it's called the CB IELTS, is at Bow Valley in Calgary. And I looked up the closest ones to Lloydminster would either be in Edmonton. Saskatoon seems closer, but there are also test centers in Regina, Estevan, and Swift Current. So you're from Lloydminster, your best bet would either be Edmonton or Saskatoon.
Another question we have. Okay, get that one. Yeah, I think we already kind of covered that one. So the next one would be from Lloydminster Learning Council Association. The question is it beneficial to purchase the IELTS study program to follow in a computer lab as we have, or is there a better way to present materials?
I think that's a good way to study the IELTS study program. And you could reinforce it by also getting some materials from the website and get the websites that we mentioned. That would also be a great way to study, and I think that's a good way to follow the computer lab. Yeah.
Okay, and the next question, okay, it's more on the formatting, I guess. What is the layout of the processes? Shorter reading than a question, read question, or reading and lots of questions? This is from.
Yeah, the reading, I believe depends whether they do in general or academic, but the general test readings tend to be a bit shorter, I believe, and less academic, whereas the academic ones are obviously more academic and a little bit longer, but they both have the same number of questions. They both have 40 questions.
And the question types are very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully we are clear with what you asked. If not, please rewrite your question with a little bit more clarification and we will address that again.
If you're asking about it in class in terms of IELTS prep, probably the best bet would be, as Narendra mentioned a couple of times, is the timed reading and timed writing, because that's where students seem to fall down, is that they can answer all the questions correctly, the ones that they answer, but they run out of time.
Yeah.
So, so three reading samples with 40 questions, I guess, would be best practice.
Okay, and we have another question from Sebler.
Yeah.
What is, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
What is yeah, no worries. What is the process if student wants to challenge the results? So I guess the question is if the students would have the chance to challenge the results and how that would be.
A number of students do appeal, and there is an appeal system, and they have to contact the office from where they've done the exam, and then they can appeal directly to IELTS. There is a system, and it is there, and they can read about it on the websites. There is a website for IELTS, and they can read about this, how to appeal. Okay. They can do that. They can do it for speaking, for reading, for writing, and for listening. They can do that.
And they have to pay.
Yes, they do have to pay a small. Yeah, there is an amount that they have to pay. Yes.
Okay, we can take the next question. Okay, Sebler is asking, why is it sometimes a learner takes the testing, scores on a particular area, then retakes the test and scores lower on the same level?
That's a really good question. The tests are very, very standardized, and the examiners, we do go through sessions. In fact, next week we are being recertified, where we go through a number of exams and a number of samples, and we do have to go through a standardization process. And the rubric that we use to mark it's very clear what it is. I mean, I guess the easy answer would be to say that the student had a bad day on the second time round, but I guess it could be any number of reasons. We can assume from the IELTS side of it that it's not the exam. They are fairly standard in terms of level of difficulty, and marking is very standardized as well. So I'm not sure.
Okay, this is more into the processes. Okay, again, okay. When a student is taking the listening portion of the exam, can they take notes at the same time?
I think they can, because the paper that they are, or the question paper that they are writing on, that's not the one that that's examined. They have to transfer their answers onto another bubble sheet.
Mhm.
And so that's why, yes, I think they can take notes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and just to add to that, maybe a little bit for my own learning here,
Mhm.
do they have the questions in front of them when they are
Yes.
listening? So is it an option to take notes or just try to answer the questions at the same time? Is it?
They should answer the questions because they won't have time.
Oh, they
There's
won't
only
have
one.
time.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
only one. They're allowed to listen only once.
Okay.
And there's one strategy to keep in mind is that they should read the questions before doing the
Absolutely.
listening, so they know
Once
what to
the
expect.
once the audio starts, there is that time there for them to read the questions
Okay.
because they give them instructions while they are doing the listening
Mhm.
test of how much time they have now, and now they should they should get ready to listen, and now the time is finished. All that is there on the audio.
Okay.
And they're
Yeah.
given time to
Yes, they are.
to read over the questions before
Yes.
the actual
Yes,
audio begins.
yes.
So basically, once their listening is over, they have to rely on their memory only if they want
Exactly.
to answer.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Another question here. Okay, we have a question from Lloydminster Learning Council Association about the tech skills of the students. What technology level should the learner be at in order to study and write the IELTS test? Especially since some of the IELTS test is via computer. That's a very good question. So do you think the students should be at a certain level?
Well, I should think so because if they're going to use at least their writing speed on the computer, computer skills should be at a high level because there's a time limit where they have to finish 2 questions. So yes, I think they need to be at a certain level of be able to write and read fast and answer questions fast. Word processing should be at a very high level.
Okay.
But in order to, if this is what the IELTS with traditional paper and pencil,
Yeah.
really there is no technological demand on them at all, other than some questions may ask about computers, technology today or technology used today. And it's some basic knowledge will answer the question, but in terms of actually writing the exam, no. Unless you do choose to do the computer-based exams.
So it would be fair to say the students have an option to do the paper-based or
or
the
the
computer
computer-based.
one if based on their skills.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we're going to pause for a sec, and we have, I think there's one of the sites that are connected live that wants to talk. I think it's CN. Does that ring a bell? I just muted your mic. Did you have a question?
Hello?
Hi.
Just a quick question. If a student needs some kind of accommodation to take the IELTS testing, is that a possibility?
Yes, definitely it's a possibility, but they have to contact the office ahead of time and give them some sort of a heads up about what kind of accommodation do they want.
Okay, and how much notice do they have to give the office?
I don't know, but I do know of like the one in McEwen, they do tell them at least 2 to 3 weeks in advance because if you want to do a test, you do have to book ahead in advance. So I think 3 weeks max.
Okay, thank you.
Probably when they're booking their
Yeah.
exam or registering to do the exam is
Yeah,
when they should notify the office of
Yes.
the accommodation
Yeah.
request.
Okay, I think we can take one more question here. With respect to the listening portion of the test, we are on understanding that students are allowed to pre-read the question, but do they have the answers ahead of time?
Is there an answer bank? That's a question, and I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
But they don't want to ask a question. Can we ask a question?
Yeah, they can pre-read the questions, but I'm not sure about the answers.
Yeah.
What kind of answers?
With the reading, I'm not sure this is answering your question, but some of the reading do have an answer or have blanks with no answer bank, but other reading passages do have an answer bank where they're provided with the answers. They basically fill in the blank. But with the listening, no, I don't think there's an answer bank.
The listening could be that, you know, they could have, like if it's, I'm just giving an example. If they're supposed to listen to directions and they're supposed to put labels onto a map, then a list is given below. They are allowed to read, but they have to choose the correct letter to place it in the correct position or on the map. I hope that's the answer. Yes, there is a sort of a list.
So we have a question from Lloyd Minster. Desiree, you can unmute now.
Okay. We have the general IELTS study program that we use in our computer lab with our newcomers. What CLB? We want to be able to say you must have a CLB, what, 4, 4.5 in order to register for the study program. Because we know that some people won't be at a high enough CLB level that it'll just be frustrating for them. And what level is that?
There's been a rough correlation shown between CLB levels and the IELTS scores. And
well, we have that. Yeah, we have that. But what we're saying is we have the IELTS study program that we pay, the general one, $640 every time we need it. And we're just wondering, for them to be successful and not frustrated, what level? It's like if they're going to write citizenship, to study for citizenship, we know they must have a CLB at least 4, or they'll just be frustrated. So we're wondering what CLB they need to participate with us in the IELTS general study program. Because we know if they have 0 CLB, they're not going to be able to do this.
yeah.
So what is that?
Well, I mean, it depends on what score they need to get for whatever they're trying to, you know, if it's citizenship and they need a score of 4 or 5, then certainly their CLB level should be about, I don't have the thing in front of me, but probably, you know, a CLB 4 or 5 in order to get a 4 in the IELTS.
Yeah, so if they don't have at least a 4, I think that if they came and sat in our computer lab and tried to do the IELTS study program, they would be absolutely lost.
Probably, yeah, yeah. And you might, you know, have a look, you know, if we can compile these websites that we've been talking about, have a look at them, because there are some very good material, there is some very good material there. And
right, we could use that, yes,
we'll try to
also, is the IELTS exam paper, computer, or person? Like speaking, that's person to person?
Yes.
Yeah.
Speaking is face to face.
Speaking is face to face.
Yeah, with the examiner, right.
With examiner, okay. How about reading and writing and listening?
They're all paper based.
So even listening is paper based? It can't be.
Yes.
Yeah, they do. They listen to the script or they listen to the audio, and they have a piece of paper in front of them. They have to perhaps label a diagram or fill in the blanks of what they're hearing. Like, one of the practice ones that I was looking at earlier today, it's somebody's having a telephone conversation about shipping a box from England to Kenya. So the guy's giving the dimensions of the box, and so there's a picture of the box on the IELTS exam, and the candidate has to write down the dimensions that he hears being described on in this telephone conversation. The address is given, so the candidate who's writing the IELTS has to fill in the correct address that he hears. So it is paper-based, yeah. They have to write the answers down.
So they don't use a computer to write this exam, any aspect of it at all?
No.
So only CELPEP is computer-based?
I'm not. I know what that test is, but I'm not that familiar with it.
Okay.
But they are
She's next to them.
except that they're speaking.
Oh, go ahead.
We have one more question too, actually a couple more. So how to improve speaking in the workplace? We just want some tips. And so they do not speak with colleagues. Everyone kind of does their own assigned tasks. And so just how do we go about that? Because we want them to be more interactive at work.
Yeah. Gee,
For example, yeah. Sorry, for example, we have a student who works out on the field, who needs to write their IELTS, but all they have to talk to during the day, and at night they go home to their native family, so they talk to the cows. The cows are not going to answer them back. How can we help them to improve their speaking? Ooh.
With wonderful teachers in the classroom. I mean, you can either come up with projects where students have to go out and interact with other people. I don't know, do man in the street interviews or what have you, but it is a tough thing to do. I realize that.
Yeah, you could ask them to do some kind of presentations that's related to their job, or even have some kind of a role play, like telephone conversations, or have some kind of a role play where they could be talking about giving advice or some kind of recommendation. So yeah, you could do something like that. But presentations really help them to get more confidence in themselves.
Okay, thank you. And will you send us, or get Barb to send us all of the websites that you've mentioned today?
Yes.
Sure, yes.
Beautiful, that would be really helpful.
And can we also have a copy of the PowerPoint and your answers that you gave to all the questions that were talked about today? That'd be really nice.
Sure.
Right on.
And I know you can't see me. This is Barb. This is recorded, so it will be posted on the health portal and also on the group's website.
Thank you. So if people are trying to get permanent residency, and that's why they're writing their IELTS, and you were saying if they get X number of rights, they'll be, whatever. What do they have to accomplish in order to be able to use their IELTS testing to become permanent residents? Because we just have a fellow that his employer extended his work visa for a month, and he needs to write an IELTS test, and the employer phoned us, and it's on the 15th, I think, of February, and they're in a panic because he needs to pass. Does he have to pass his IELTS or just write it?
Yeah, well, there is no pass on IELTS. It depends on who's asking for the score. So, for example, if you're applying to immigrate to Canada, it may require a score of 4. You're applying for a workplace program, they may need a 5. If you're applying to be
permanent resident
for the medical association, they may require a 7. The University of Alberta may require an IELTS score of 6.5. So it's really.
So if you work at a cattle feedlot,
it would depend on what his employer is asking, what score his employer is asking him to get.
Yeah, depends on the
I don't
requirement.
think his employer cares for that. I don't think his employer cares for that. He's just herding cattle.
What he wants, though, is to become a permanent resident. So what is the number that he has to get?
Becoming what?
A permanent resident.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really know. I was trying to find out that this morning, and I couldn't find anywhere. I'm guessing like from a 4 to a 5. Probably close to 5. I really don't know.
Well, I think Canada Immigration is saying that newcomers coming over have to have at least a CLB4, like skilled workers, etc. But refugees don't have to have anything. So
correct.
I really don't know. It's very confusing. But it seems odd. He can hardly speak, and he's going to go write his IELTS test in a few weeks, and they wanted us to get him up to snuff.
And it's $305.
Oh, what is the cost of that IELTS test? Because we've been hearing lots of rumors.
What's that?
Yeah. I didn't catch it. How much did it cost for what?
Write an IELTS exam.
Oh, it's about $350.
Yeah. It depends on the testing center. I think Narendra and I both do the assessment at McEwen here in Edmonton, and I think they charge $350.
Yeah.
Well, it's cheaper now. Saskatchewan's $305.
Oklahoma's wrong. Right up to
Yeah, so there's a lot of stake if they want to do it again.
I just sorry. So it's just they can pick a price? Is that what's happening?
They pick a center. They want to shop around. They can find a cheaper one, but McEwen charges $350. If they maybe cheaper in Saskatoon or I'm not sure, but each center charges their own price.
Awesome.
So, in order to find the closest site, how do you do that?
Well, the IELTS, if you just go to IELTS.org, I think you can kind of drill down, find locations, Canada, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and you'll find.
Is there a possibility? Most places people don't want to drive to the city to do this. I wonder if there is a possibility of a test site like in Lloydminster.
As far as I know, and I did look, there isn't a center in Lloydminster. The nearest one would either be Saskatoon or here in Edmonton.
I know, but rural people don't want to drive to Saskatoon or Edmonton.
How do we bring it here to make it more accessible?
Yeah, that's out of our hands. You'd have to, I know there would have to be some school or some institution in Lloydminster who says, well, let's open up an IELTS center. Then they'd have to get certified through the IELTS organization, through IDP or Cambridge.
But you could contact McEwen. Sometimes McEwen does off-site testing,
Oh, really?
and they do. I've known that they've gone to Grand Prairie and other places. So maybe you can contact McEwen and ask them if they could do an off-site testing at Lloydminster.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
If you have enough students to make it worthwhile, then maybe they would.
Yes,
Yeah.
they would do that. They've done that.
Okay, thank you for being with us so far, and thank you, Nurjan and Peter, for the presentation. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and I have to apologize for the technical problems that we had earlier. And if there were some information that you missed, once we come back, we would be happy to get back to them. And I'm sure Nurjan and Peter wouldn't mind repeating some of those. And yeah, so we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you again, and hope you stay with us.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello
welcome back.
again. And okay, so I think we had a good first session by having some background information, and we got some really good questions, which I think gave us some ideas of where our listeners are coming from, the other participants. And we really want to keep this session interactive, to hear from you and know what information you're looking for, so we can go that direction, basically. So at this point, if you have more questions, we would be happy to take them. Yeah, so then we go from here. Is there any questions so far? Okay,
So, last time when we were doing the writing, marking the writing, I had a problem with one of the questions, Peter, do you remember? And it was about, the question was about parents are being so busy nowadays, and, they don't have time to take care of the kids. And they had asked a question, I think it was a writing task too. And I had a lot of problems with cohesion and the vocabulary, that's the lexical resource. So I was wondering, how can we help our students to improve their writing and let them, write better so that they can follow some of the band descriptors that we have here in writing?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it goes back to being able to write a good essay, and I think that where do you begin? Well, you begin with, think of a basic opinion essay. You have background information. You finish your background paragraph with your thesis statement, and it doesn't matter what format the question is, whether it's advantages or disadvantages or pros and cons or agree or disagree. You're going to have some kind of a thesis statement, and then run from there. How do you work on coherence? Well, looking at conjunctions and whatever transition words, and it's more than just transition words. You also have to look at substitution. Can students use that effectively, and so on?
I always tell my students when they're preparing for an IELTS exam is that always in your essay or in your writing task too, make sure that you've got at least 3 to 4 or 5 paragraphs with the introduction, the body paragraphs, at least 3 of them, and make sure that you've got a conclusion. Because you go down to a 5, to a band 5 if you see that there are no paragraphs. So that's one of the things that's really important in IELTS is that you do write.
By clearly defined paragraphs.
Absolutely.
Something like close to the standard, so at
Yes,
least they have a kind of commonly known format there for the examiner.
Yes, exactly. And another thing that I'm always telling them about is the task achievement, and that is one of the most important descriptions for an essay in IELTS, that they're able to get the task achievement. And if you're interested, some of you who are out there listening to us, there's a band descriptor which is which is called the public version, and you can find this gives a very clear idea of all the 4 descriptors for writing. Yeah, I'll let Peter do a little more talking on that.
Sure. I just want to mention also that one real crucial thing, probably a dozen crucial things, but you can't write a good essay if you can't understand the question. So really, it's understanding the question, being able to address the issues being brought forward in the question, are really crucial to writing a good essay. Because you can have wonderful English, great vocabulary, good cohesion, but if you haven't answered the question, you're in trouble right off the start. So understanding the question is key. And I might mention at that point, for the academic task 1, describing graphs and charts, a very common confusion people see is mixing up. If you see a chart with percentage versus population, well, people might write, increased by 20 million people. It's not 20 million people, it might be 20%. So just keywords like that they have to be aware of. So understanding the chart that they're looking at in terms of task 1 for the academic is really important to have a good look at the chart. It is a time test, and they're anxious to get ready, but I think it really pays off to have a good look at the chart or table and understand what severe before you actually start writing.
And also to include enough of data or numbers in the writing, because if you do not have enough of that, then also you're penalized for it.
Right. Yeah. It's good to be able to describe the graph, but describe it using using the numbers that are presented to you. Another, I won't say problem, that something that students should avoid simply because of the time constraints in writing the exam is the graphs might show something, show a trend, or show what's happening in a certain area. It's not asking you to, or it's not asking the candidates to say why. And from time to time, I'll see students who actually go on and try to explain why tourism has increased in Australia from this period to that period. But it doesn't ask for that at all. And if they start writing in that, they may run out of time because it's totally irrelevant. The question clearly describe the graph below. It doesn't say, why do you think this happens?
And another point, a point that I'd like to mention is that the lexical resource, try to use a wide range of vocabulary, and also to use idioms if they can, phrasal verbs, and word formation, nouns, verbs, adjective, adverbs, and also be aware of spellings, not to misspell words, because that also could be a problem. Punctuation and capitalization is another key point that I'd like to make, where they would be penalized, and also to use a wide range of structures, complex, compound sentences, would be, and have to have a good control of their grammar.
As I mentioned before, just to add on to what Anjan said, you could have write an essay with perfect grammar, but if you just use simple sentences throughout, you get a very low score in the grammar component of the exam.
Are we getting any questions, Barb, or any sites that would like to discuss something with us? Okay. Is there any specific area maybe we can open up that our participants would like us to talk about? So if there's no question, I think then, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I guess we can always give our comments and our tips and websites to Barb, and she can pass them on to our participants.
And we can pass on our email address as well, and by all means, if you have any questions later on, we're happy to answer your answer.
We could do that.
Yeah,
We could give our emails to the participants.
Yeah,
we don't work for IELTS, so the questions about setting up test centers and things like that, we really don't know much about that. And but in terms of preparing your students for the IELTS and things like that, we're very happy to help out and answer questions.
Yeah. So we hope that we opened that conversation, and we'll be always willing to hear from our participants and follow up. Yeah. Thank you so much again for being with us today. That's a very exciting event for us, and we hope to see you again.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much for your time.
Yeah. Have a good evening.
So thank you everyone again for taking the opportunity to join us. Today we are ending a little bit early. We weren't sure how long this would take to do a live session this way. Like they said, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at any time, and that'll be great. And hopefully we'll have more of these in the future, especially now that we're getting lots of the bugs figured out on how to do one of these live streams. Okay, so we're disconnecting now. You have a great day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good luck.